When operating a cluster, it is also very important that we get a full quorum. So an absolute majority within our cluster. But let's just switch to an example to illustrate that. For instance, we are running a cluster that consists of these two nodes. And then one node fails. At first, that doesn't seem like a big deal. And you might think, well, the other node can just start the important services, so VMs and containers that we have added to the high availability section within Proxmox VE. So all important services will just run on the first node, while the second node is unavailable. But in this case, node 1 doesn't know for sure if node 2 is really down. Cause for example, it could also be the case that node 1 has network problems and node 2 just seems to be down. So if the network connection between the hosts is down and every node thinks that the other one isn't available, this can cause unwanted consequences. For example, that both nodes start several services, which causes undesirable results. For example, two running DHCP servers, or the two services are writing to a database instead of one, and so on and so forth. Yeah, and such scenarios can be avoided by setting up a 3-node cluster or a cluster with an odd number of nodes in general. So just imagine one node fails in that scenario. Then these two nodes, 1 and 3, would report that node 2 is down, and only from node 2's perspective, it looks like if node 1 and node 3 are down. And since each node has one vote per default, we have a full quorum and absolute majority in this scenario. So 2 votes from these two nodes against 1 vote from this node. But of course, depending on your requirements and the budget, a 3rd node could be an overkill. So what can we do in that scenario? And basically, the solution for that is pretty simple. We just need to add a so-called queue device. For example, that can also be a Proxmox host, like shown on this slide, but with less expensive hardware. So it wouldn't be possible to migrate the resources of the node that is down to this one, but the queue device can check if the other nodes are available, and it has also one vote inside of our cluster, so it helps us to achieve a full quorum. And potentially with a hardware that is a lot cheaper. And in addition to that, the queue device doesn't need to be a Proxmox host. It would also be possible to use a Linux system of your choice, for example Debian, or other common Linux distributions like Ubuntu or Red Hat Enterprise Linux. And you can really run that on hardware with low specs, for example also on a Raspberry Pi, or even on a virtualized system, like a VM on a NAS, that is running 24/7 anyway. We just need to install the corresponding packages on this Linux system and configure the service, but I will also show you that in an upcoming video. So yeah, that would be one option, to achieve a full quorum without needing to buy a 3rd server just for that purpose. Yeah, so much for the basic theoretical subject of achieving a full quorum. What we especially need to consider when creating a 2-node cluster.